right, here we go. So part three, we're going to get into more of the physicality. This is kind of the brain surface anatomy and its different functions, and it's just dealing with major regions of the brain. And you've probably all studied this in your physiology classes or biology or anatomy classes. But I just wanted to go over a couple things with you here. The first being part of what is unique to human beings is our frontal lobe area. Correct me if I'm wrong, because a lot of you probably know more about this than I do, but it is my understanding that the frontal lobes don't even begin to fully engage or attach until people reach their late teens, and this can go up to maybe 25 years of age, maybe that range of like 18 to 25. Young people's brains, not just their minds, but their brains are actually changing, and they're able to access parts of the frontal lobe that they were not engaged with prior. Does that sound correct to what you've heard or understood? And when you look, go
Yes.
ahead. Yes, so that's part of that human development piece. And when you look at what that frontal lobe does, problem solving, thinking, planning, judgment, emotional expression, creativity, behavioral control, uh, it, it, it really corresponds so interestingly. I'll never forget, I gave a high school graduation talk, and my whole talk was kind of based around this premise of your frontal lobes haven't fully attached yet, and oh, the things that you will see and the thoughts that you will think. And I love this aspect of human development and our thoughts, and I think it's part of why they don't generally teach philosophy in elementary or middle school. It's even rare to find it in high schools, and it's because you have to have a certain level of frontal lobe attachment to engage this discipline of abstract thinking. And I love watching movies or having conversations with little kids that haven't yet developed abstract thinking. And it's really interesting to see their lack of understanding of certain situations or events in the world. And then as we get older, I'll never forget, I was 18 years old when I had my crisis of faith, or whatever you want to call it. And it was just like scales had been ripped off my eyes. And I was thinking about it in like spiritual terms, but the more I learned about the human brain, it makes me wonder if my frontal lobes had started to attach. And now all of a sudden I was able to see things and understand things or question things that never occurred to me before in my life. So that's a really interesting aspect of our human development. Lobes of the cerebrum. And I just thought this was interesting because in some of the slides coming up, I'm going to refer to specific areas. We already talked about the pineal gland, right, with Rene Descartes. That's that little one right in there. Probably doesn't do what he thought it did, but and the hypothalamus will come up in some of our other conversations as well. I think it's also important to be aware of and discuss the difference between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems have opposite roles. While your sympathetic nervous system carries signals that put your body systems on alert, your parasympathetic carries signals that relax those systems. The two systems work together to keep your body in balance. And there's also a difference between voluntary and involuntary bodily actions. So many of these things we see in the sympathetic and even in the parasympathetic keep the body running. And in other words, we don't have to consciously think to breathe or to pump our blood or to filter our blood or all these different things. Those are automatic systems in the body. But we also have volitional control of the body. And we talked about this when we were talking about Rene Descartes and the mind-body distinction. But with a thought, I can raise my hand, I can make a fist, I can wave, I can do all these things because there's some connection between my mind and my brain, and my brain and my body. And we pretty much understand the physiological connection between the brain and the body and through the central nervous system, but we really don't understand the interaction with mind and the body or the brain. But we are going to be talking a lot about that tonight because that's certainly what I'm interested in, not just our physiology, but also our psyche or our non-tangible parts of our body. I had a very good friend for over 25 years who was a quadriplegic, and I would travel with him and I would basically be his attendant. He would have like three attendants during the day, one for the morning, one at work, and then an attendant at night. And so when I would travel with him, he wasn't just taking a break from his job, he was taking a break from his attendance as well. And I was the lucky person to get to go with him. And he liked warm tropical climes. So I got to see some amazing places. But I also got to do the work of three attendants during our trips. And I was so fascinated by how his body worked, even though he suffered a diving accident at 16 years of age and he couldn't move anything below his shoulders. And so he didn't have any tactile control of his hands, so he couldn't feed himself or any of that. But he could, using his shoulder muscles, he could turn pages of a book by like going like that, or he could whack a elevator button with his hand, but it was coming up from here. And everything below this, he could not connect with. And even though his physical body was still there, because of a physical damage in that dive to his spinal column, even though this man had a powerful mind, he could not wiggle his toes. He couldn't do anything below the shoulders. And I just thought that was so incredibly fascinating. But his blood still pumped, his digestive system still worked, his kidneys still work. I know some quadriplegic people have to be on dialysis because that part of their parasympathetic is no longer working. He did have to wear a catheter, and we had to do bowel programs and stuff like that. And if you look down on that parasympathetic column, those are much more towards the tip of the spinal column than up towards the brain, where a lot of those other functions are taking place. Does anyone know what a cymeks is? It's kind of sci-fi futuristic, but it's basically a machine with a human brain in it. And even though that has been sci-fi of the past, that is something I don't know if you'll see in your lifetime, but it's definitely kind of where they're headed, as if they ever learn the ability to transfer a brain, right? And would almost be like a plug and play where you could have like your brain in a hermetically sealed box, and you could just, like right now, I could just have it plugged into my computer because I'm at home at my desk. And then if I wanted to go downstairs, I could just have a robotic arms pull it, disconnect it from the computer, put it in my little walking apparatus that could take me down the stairs. And then if I wanted to go on a holiday and visit, it could plug me into my vehicle or my little personal drone, and I could fly around. And I asked my friend, because a lot of studies were happening while he was still alive, where in some of these robotic labs, they were able to hook up electrodes into quadriplegic people's brains, and they were able, with a thought, to move a mechanical arm. And I was like, Carl, would you ever consider something like that? Like let your broken human body go and have a boss super functional robotic body. It would still be you, but you would no longer have a broken, and he just wanted nothing to do with it. And I thought that was so interesting. We're living in very interesting times, and these are going to create a lot of ethical dilemmas. And who knows, this may even become a part of your counseling too, or people seeking advice on plug and play parts as we advance with our technology into the future.